Hello, everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Jack left the church as the morning light fell, but instead of feeling relieved, he felt a new heaviness pressing down on his shoulders. With each step, his ears echoed with whispers, no longer coming from outside but from within his own head. The priest's voice echoed steadily, slowly, sometimes just a creepy, dry laugh. Jack knew that, even though the ritual had been broken, the priest still clung to his soul. In the days that followed, Jack's life became hell. He could no longer sleep peacefully, because every time he closed his eyes, the priest's shadow appeared in his dreams. He stood at the head of his bed, his red eyes staring into his mind. One night, Jack woke up screaming, his hands bloody from scratching himself without realizing it. The small house became increasingly gloomy, mirrors cracked, and objects moved. Frequently, even though he was alone, the villagers began to take notice. They saw Jack wandering around at night, muttering like a madman. One day he stood before St. Mary's gate, eyes closed, mouth chanting strange prayers. The villagers were terrified, whispering that Jack had become part of the curse. New ghost stories began to spread, and the main characters were no longer the missing people of the past, but him. One evening, Jack decided to write a diary, hoping to keep his mind clear. But as the pen glided across the paper, he was horrified to realize that the writing was not his. The ancient, squiggly lines gradually appeared, recording the curses in the language of the book. He put down the pen, his hand shaking. The priest's laughter echoed in his head, mocking him like a puppet. In desperation, Jack remembered what Mrs. Margaret had said. There were places in the village that still held sacred vestiges strong enough to resist the darkness. He searched for an ancient shrine at the edge of the forest, where no one had dared to enter for a long time. The wooden door was tightly closed, but when Jack put his hand on it, it opened gently. Inside, the moss-covered stone statues seemed to be watching him. Jack knelt down, begging for a way out. But at that moment, the priest's voice rang out in his head, full of anger. He said that no one could save him because they were now one. The wind rose in the temple, the statues shook, the oil lamp went out. In the darkness, Jack saw his reflection on the wall, no longer resembling himself, but deformed, elongated, his head covered with a drooping cap, just like the priest. Jack screamed, rushed outside, panting in the thick darkness. He knew he didn't have much time. If he didn't act soon, he would be taken over and turned into a tool of darkness. That night, Jack sat in the small house, opened the notebook again. He wrote a trembling line: "If I am no longer me, burn the book and imprison me with him." But when he finished writing, his hand automatically tore the page. He looked down and saw his fingers were thin and unusually pale. The priest's voice rang out, "You will not escape, Jack." The next day, Jack walked along the village road. The villagers watched him from afar in horror. A child shouted that his eyes were red as fire. Jack lowered his head, trying to hide it, but he knew in his heart that the change was happening. He felt half of himself disappearing, giving way to something else. That night, Jack returned to St. Mary's. He stood before the rotten door, feeling the darkness calling. In his mind, the priest urged, "Enter, complete what I could not." Jack clenched, his fists, screaming to himself that he was still in control. But his feet kept moving, as if someone were pulling an invisible string. When he entered the cellar, there were no more begging souls, only dead silence. The stone table was still there, and the liturgical book lay intact, as if it had never been burned. Jack stepped back, his heart racing. He realized the darkness never really went away. It just transformed and was now using him to keep living. In the next episode, Jack will have to choose between sacrificing himself to end the curse, or letting the priest's spirit take over his body, turning him into St. Mary's new demon.